presentation. Anybody a non-member of the History Center? Welcome to our Tuesday talks. We really invite you to join because it costs much. You get advanced information about all the program we're doing, and we have a lot of great social events during the year. So you can pick up a newsletter as you go out and also an application. Just a quick rundown of upcoming events. The next upcoming event is the monthly program on September 9th. It's going to be a field trip to All Saints Episcopal Church. It's the church's 150th anniversary this year, and Father Cordo presenting a history of the church. The October 9th monthly presentation is called Local Art Authors Take on Our Towns, and we'll have 4 different authors that will share the impact the towns have had on their writing. I think that'd be a real interesting one. We'll have a moderator, and you can ask questions of the writers. Today's program sponsor is John Thomas. Is John here?
No, I'll tell about that in a minute.
Thank you. We have sponsors for all of our programs. It's only $150, and it really helps keep the lights on and keep our great programming up. And I'm not going to introduce her because she's going to introduce herself. Marsha Kontio.
I can't tell you what a thrill it is to be here, and I thank you all very much. Yes, I'm going to talk about Kirby House stories. And first of all, because people are usually in a rush to leave, I want to give my thanks now to the Saugatuck-Douglas History Center. A lot of these pictures have come through them. One of the first pictures I ever received came from them. And John Thomas is our sponsor, as had been mentioned. And he's not here. He left a message for me last night that he's still in Arizona. And he was very sorry he couldn't be here. But he did sponsor this program, and he indicated to me that it had been his idea to have the program on Kirby House this year. Also, Ken could not have done this without him. We've spent a lot of time together working on this program, and I hope you enjoy it. So with that, I'm going to take you back about more than 100 years. It's taken me maybe 20 years to figure all of this out. I still don't have all the answers. I still don't have all the information. I only have 55 minutes to share it with you. So we're going to go right on. This is Willard S. Gill. This is Sarah Kirby's father. I got this picture from the Masonic Lodge. And he came here in 1870 with Sarah. And when she arrived here, she was only 9 years old. And she arrived as a young girl in the 1870s. And this picture, I think, has some resemblance to her. So that's Willard S. Gill. This is Frank Kirby's. Sarah had married Frank Kirby in 1883. And I'm not sure where they lived exactly when they were married, but this is a business card that he had. And it was also advertising tobacco. Plug tobacco, as you can see. And if you notice up in the trees, there are little faces. So it was a puzzle card that was passed out by the tobacco company. This I got through Carl and Larry. It was found in a house that they were redoing, and so they had given it to us. Anyway, Frank Kirby, he was an accountant for the basket factory. He was a salesman. And you know the house that's down here that's painted kind of orange, it's on the corner of Washington and Center Street. And I think there was a store there that was, it is what it is, or something that's no longer there. But anyway, that's where he had his business. And a lot of the people from the basket factory would come and buy their lunch materials and things like that for lunch from his store. He was also a boot, shoe, and crockery merchant, and it was advertised in the local newspaper where he was selling maple syrup for 50 cents a gallon. I think that was kind of a sweet deal. So anyway, this says a little bit about Frank Kirby and the tobacco. Now this is the first picture of the house. This came through Ray and Jim, who had the house after we had it. But this actually came from F. Thomas. And F. Thomas is the father of John Thomas, and John Thomas is the one that can't be here today, the sponsor. So he had this, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in a little bit. This is the floor plan that the Kirby house was designed around. You can see the front door is over on the left. This one on the right is the floor plan for the second floor. And you can see the main stairway going up. You can see the back stairway going down. One of the interesting things, notice above where it says plaza, and there's the bay windows, and then there's like a, what do I want to call it? What did they call it? A conservatory. So the conservatory was there. That doesn't exist. They never did exist as far as we could tell. So the reception hall, the vestibule, all of this is pretty much the same except for that. And I think it was simplified by removing the circles. Instead, they kind of made it different. And so this is the back stairway coming down to the kitchen, the pantry, and such. And this is a drawing probably around 1890. Now, Sarah, marrying Frank Kirby in 1883, this is the first mortgage that she had taken out on the house. And you'll notice on the mortgage that it's only in her name. And the mortgage was for $400 at 10% interest for 1 year. She borrowed the money from Mr. Kirby, who had the hotel in downtown Douglas, the one that burned in the 30s. It was a big structure, and now the new house that had been moved onto that site, you know, the big white house, I don't know who has it, but anyway, that's where the hotel had sat. So she borrowed the money from Mr. Kirby. 10%, I have to tell you, was probably because she was a woman. She shouldn't have, or couldn't have they couldn't even vote. And so she borrowed this money in her own name. And whether it wouldn't have been the cost of building the house or anything like that, it was probably the cost of finishing touches maybe, or maybe knowing Frank a little bit, maybe there were some medical bills or whatever. So anyway, this is 1883. Now this takes us a little further ahead, but I want to say that Frank Kirby had indicated in the newspaper that he died from an abscess on the brain. And an abscess on the brain kind of says somebody died from syphilis. And the obituary indicates that he had not been well. People who knew him could tell that he was not well, and suddenly he died, and he died in 1896. He's buried in the Douglas Cemetery. If you go out Wiley Road, you go up and over the overpass, the cemetery's on the right, not too far after you end the overpass. And it's easily seen because it's a crooked obelisk, and it has a tendency to be Sarah, it seemed that maybe she should be buried there. I went looking for her, couldn't find her there. But Sarah's parents, Mr. Bill and her mother, Maria, are buried there. We found through the township office and a card, like a cemetery card as to who's buried on that plot, that there was a baby buried there. And John Kirby, who was Frank Kirby's father, he's buried there. He had served in the Civil War, and he was a harness maker after the Civil War. So the family all kind of was in this area. And so that's what happened to Frank. He died. And this is one of the first of the pictures that we have. Now, here's the obituary for Frank. And I don't know if you can see it to read it, but it basically says what I told you. Also, it's interesting to note, as was with other people in the time, that funerals were kind of held in the house, or people were laid to in state, should I say, in their house. And thinking about Kirby House, the place that could be closed off on the main floor would be the dining room. So the dining room closed off from the pantry. It had the big sliding doors, wooden doors, oak doors. And so I have a feeling he was laid in the bay window in that. So, now this picture I credit totally to the Historic Center. When you look at this picture, it's hard for me to tell which way to stand that I'm not blocking a view. But this lady right here is Sarah Kirby. Doesn't she look like the Wicked Witch of the West? And standing next to her is Minnie Bell Spencer. And Minnie Bell Spencer married D. Milton Gerber. Gerber baby food, yeah. And so they're pals, they're standing here. This is E.E. Weed. He was responsible for the construction of the big pavilion in Saugatuck, and also the basket factory in Douglas. He was connected to both of those. This little kid is probably one of his children. I was told by Mary Wark, and this is how I've gotten a lot of information, was from Mary Wark, that this is Professor Flanagan, but she had no more information on him, and so I don't either. And this is D. Milton Gerber himself. Mary Wark told me that D. Milton Gerber was a corpulent man, which says that he was a little overweight. Okay? And being so, he had to have a special automobile built for him so that he could sit in the automobile and turn the steering wheel and his belly wouldn't get in the way. So that's D. Milton Gerber. He was also president of the Fruit Growers Bank. He was a businessman. He was a shareholder in the basket factory. And so as I look at this picture, I really think this, Sarah's in mourning, okay? She's got on black. She never ever wore another color. And the other ladies are all dressed in what could be summer clothes. They're white or tan or something like that. So this, I think, is Mrs. E.E. Weed. That's what I think, and I think these are some children. This is Lenore Spencer. And Lenore Spencer was a sister of Minnie Bell Spencer Gerber. Okay? Lenore Spencer was the spinstress piano teacher in the area. So all of the children who learned how to play the piano, they went to her house. By the way, a little sidelight, there used to be a house that sat over here on the corner, and when Minnie Bell Spencer married D. Milton Gerber, they built a house over there that was called Harborview. Harborview is where Kontiki, Thor Heyerdahl finished writing the book Kontiki over there. Okay? That house burned down in March of 1984. So they were responsible for building that house back when they were married. These, I think, are also some children that may belong to E.E. Weed. I'm not sure, but this, I'm fairly positive, is Bud Kirby, Sarah Kirby's son. And this is her daughter, Faith. And this lady, I was told, her last name was Thomas. I don't know if any of you know any of these people or have met them or know family members, but that's kind of the lineup. But I think this picture was taken as a way of a mourning picture, perhaps, maybe of comfort, but I think these are all basket factory people or related to the basket factory. And I had something else on my mind I was going to tell you, maybe it'll come back. Oh, this was taken out at Lake Ridge Farm. And Lake Ridge Farm, if you go down Wiley Road and turn left towards the washout, Lake Ridge Farm, there's a big sign that says Lake Ridge Farm. I think they take it in the winter time, but that's where I think this picture was taken. And by the way, Frank and Sarah were married at Lake Ridge Farm. So it would be natural that they were not here. Okay, so this came from the Historic Center. This is a group of ladies, and they are a part of the Larkin Club. This was a social group. It was also a buying group. My grandmother has what she called the Larkin Mirror, and if you spent so much money on food products or whatever, you'd get these coupons, kind of like SNH green stamps or TV stamps, you know, for us back in the 50s. And so this was kind of a buying group, and this again, dressed in black, Sarah Kirby. Notice she has her glasses, I think, hanging on a pin. Minnie Bell Spencer Gerber, sitting right next to her again. This is Blanche Ellis. Ellis Street's named after this lady, Blanche Ellis. This is Mrs. Shua. Her husband was a mercantile person. And this up here is Lenore Spencer, her sister. And this is Kate Wark. Kate Wark had married, oh golly, what's his name? Anyway, he was head of the basket factory at one point in time. James Wark. So that's a group of ladies, and you can see that Sarah was very social, but she still dressed in black. Now this, I think, is my favorite. I know that the Historic Center has a copy of this picture, but I found this picture myself at Tulip City Antique Mall many years ago. I just happened to run across it, and I flipped it over, and it says, Halloween, Dining Room Workhouse, 1910. So we know this is... You can see Sarah sitting here with the flowers around her face. Okay? And let's see. This is Kate Wark up here. And so this was taken in the dining room of her house. This was, she was the hostess, let's say.
Excuse me. If you would do that down here, we could see where you're pointing to much better.
This is Kate Wark. Okay, I'm not going to identify anybody. But one of the funny things is that I was told that there's one gentleman in this picture somewhere. I've never been able to say definitely who or where, but that's what I heard. So use your imagination. So nice to meet you. Does everybody? And I would guess not all of you know where the workhouse is. You don't know. If you go down to Main Street, where Everyday People Cafe is, and take a left and head out to Blue Star Highway, okay? It's the house. It's the last house that's on the right. And that was built by James Wark. And he had been married before he met Kate. But his wife died, and Kate Wark then finally died about 1944. So we're going to see what's next. So this is a picture of the Kirby house. It's the first picture I ever really saw of the original house. And the other one I showed you was a blow-up of this. But this is Hawthorne Lodge. And you can see here that Sarah and Faith had gone together to do a home in every sense of the word, for people who are tired, for people convalescing from illness, and for people who wish just a home. Notice the phone number's 25. So, yes. So this is an ink blot, and you can look on the back and you can see where it's blotted again.
What year would that be?
I think this is sometime in the 20s. That's my guess.
His mother's best friend, Aunt Peggy, who was born probably 115 years ago, said she was born there.
Yeah. Well, I'll get to the Kirby house then in a minute. Then we go on. This is Faith. This is Sarah's daughter as a young person. This is Faith as she was older. So Faith and Faith. And this is her son Bud, or Willard. He was kind of named after her father. And he was born in 1887, and I know that Faith was older. They were married in 1883, so 84, 85 is probably sometime when Faith was born. But he was born in February of 1887, and I found that out through the commercial record. So, and a lot of this information comes from the commercial record. This is a Christmas card that Mary Wark gave to me, and it's one that Sarah had sent out. We think that's probably somewhere between 1910, 1920, maybe. It's kind of a classy looking card. This is John Nevins, and John Nevins, this picture actually hangs out at Clearbrook, and it's in the room off this way as you go in, and it hangs above the fireplace. And so this was Sarah's grandson. And this is a picture of Sarah about 1930. Now Sarah, having lived in the house a long time, it's kind of hard to imagine that she was happy when Blue Star Highway went in, you know. That would have been a huge change for her, because she had had all that space and everything, and Center Street would have been the main street. It would have gone out to Ferry and then turned left and on out. And so Blue Star going in, and I think that went in about 1932, and for that reason I think that Sarah probably left this area in 1932. However, in a commercial record, she's driving a new sedan in 1930. Now this is after the burning of the basket factory, and so you try and hook all of this stuff together. And I kind of think maybe the Hawthorne Lodge convalescent care sort of thing might have hooked into that some way, being in the 20s. But, so this is Sarah around 70 years of age. Guess what's this? This is the hospital. This is, as you're looking at the front of Kirby House, this is the front door area, and this is that little nook that was on the, I should go back and get that again, but the little nook when you go in, this is where the oxygen was kept. And that's Mrs. Corkill, Dr. Corkill, and then a doctor at the hospital. This is where they kept the babies. And if you walk in the front door and go to the left, that room was all sectioned off with doors and whatever. When we finally got the house, you could see the paint marks on the ceiling where the 2x4s had been to create a wall. You can still see the leaded glass windows. This is one of the beds. Yeah. This was the room that was on the main floor. And the fireplace is still there. And possibly there could have been another bed in there, because the room would be big enough to hold another bed. But whoever it was, they had flowers. These pictures came through Chuck Lorenz. He brought them over one night to us. Now, I think I was told her name was like Mrs. Brecken or Mrs. Breckenridge. Mrs. started with a B, but you can tell that she's preparing what would be probably supper for the patients, and it's 4 o'clock. I like the clock there. So this is in what had been the butler's pantry. I don't know any of those ladies, but it's a motley looking crew. Oh my, yep. And so this is in what we had used as a commons room, and the back stairway is going up that way. You can see where the back stairway is going up.
Do you have any information on the names of the nurses or anything like that?
Don't really know. The only one that I was ever informed of was Mrs. Corkill, and she was Dr. Corkill's wife, and she was kind of a head nurse. So when you see people sitting at a desk and writing and doing things like that.
What years did the hospital operate?
Well, Sarah left in 1932, and her daughter Faith was the nurse for Dr. Walker, and they had talked about putting the hospital in the old Terra building. That had been the first choice. And then that didn't work out for whatever reason, and so they said, well, since her mother had given her the house, that they could turn the Kirby house into the hospital.
And so that went through the fifties?
Oh, it was the hospital from 1932 until 1960. And actually, the Kirby house lasted longer as a temporary hospital. It was known as the Saugatuck-Douglas Temporary Community Hospital. It lasted longer than the hospital that they built, which closed about 1984.
Well, my grandparents had their summer home at the end of Center Street. And I always told that the head nurse, this is back in the fifties, when I was a kid and a teenager, was my grandfather's cousin. So, didn't have the same last name.
And she was the head nurse.
Yeah, so,
Interesting. Does anybody know any of the nurses or anything?
guess I'll have to do some research.
Yeah, yeah. That would be an interesting project in itself,
Yeah.
you know, to, Now, this is Mrs. Corkle. This is in the basement, folks. Notice the bed? Let me tell you, the basement wasn't pretty. And so this is Mrs. Corkle, and I don't know who that young girl is. It looks like she was a nurse in training or something, you know. But somewhere we were reading that the labor room for babies was in the basement. The other thing that we kind of have known is that a lot of the babies were born in what we call room 3, which was the bedroom that was on the main floor. So maybe they carried them up, maybe they had them walk up. Okay. And again, Mrs. Corkle. This picture was taken on the second floor. There was a radiator at the one wall. What we called room 6 was over here. What we called room 7 was over here. And so this is between the two rooms. And there's a picture up there, and I think one is Dr. Walker. And there's another picture. I'm not sure who that's of. It's hard to see, hard to tell. Kind of a cute desk, though, isn't it? And here's a picture of the house as a hospital, and this is about 1952 or so. So from 1932 to 1960, this was still the house as a hospital.
Marsha,
Hmm?
did,
Who said that? Oh, hi.
was this a full-service hospital? Did they do surgery and everything in there? Oh, wow.
One of the stories, it's kind of interesting because as people mention things, it kind of brings in other stories I have, but does anybody remember Bruce Troutman? Okay. Bruce Troutman worked on the trash truck for a while as a young man, and he had pulled in to empty the trash from the dumpster, and the nurses came out, their apron strings just a-flapping, and they drove him into the house. They laid him on a table next to a patient in the operating room, which at that time was room 3, did a direct transfusion. He needed blood. They found the first person So, anyway, that's a hospital. So, the Saugatuck-Douglas Hospital closed in March of 1960, and the new hospital was built. And
in addition to Dr. Walker, are you aware of other doctors that
well, there
practiced there?
was Dr. Walker, Dr. Corkle. Beyond that, I'm not sure. Your husband didn't practice at the Kirby house, did he?
No, he came in the 60s.
In the 60s, okay. So he would have gone to the new hospital. I don't know of any other doctors. It would be interesting to, again, that's another whole newspaper reading or something like that.
Are there existing patient records from that era?
That would be interesting. I thought that the patient records could be still at what had been the old hospital, but in looking, I haven't found any. Lauren?
I remember being told that they all went down to Kalamazoo, in western Michigan, and they put it into the archives there. And all the patient records are in the basement of some building.
Well, that could help with that question. So after the hospital was there, this is what it looked like at one time, but it became an antique shop. These are things I've been told. I wasn't here, so I don't really know, but I was told it was an antique shop, junk shop, Humane Society, real estate office, and that's when F. Thomas had it. And F. Thomas is the father of John Thomas, who sponsors this program today, who, as I mentioned earlier, wasn't able to be here. He was planning on flying here, but things happened and it wasn't possible. F. Thomas came over one time and we sat on the front porch and had a glass of wine and chit-chatted a while, and he was telling me about the house when he had gotten it. And he thought that it could be haunted. He said, he had been working in his office, and his office was in the dining room at that time. And he was sitting in his office, and he could hear footsteps up on the third floor, walking. And he went upstairs, and there was nobody there. But he was sure he heard those footsteps. And he was a wonderful gentleman. Did you know him? Yes. Yes. You did too, yeah. And he really, I kind of think it was he that perhaps had saved the house in a way, because at some point in time, and I don't know who it was, somebody here might know, but they had bought the house and they were going to tear it down and put a mini mall there. And the house was saved. We have no idea how or why, but it was saved. And I think F. Thomas might have had something to do with that. So anyway, those are the various things that the house had been. Oh, when I talk about, it was kind of an abandoned house too. You've got to know that. And a fella came up one day. He was probably my age at the time, maybe a little younger. And he says, he said the scariest thing he ever did, one Halloween, a group of his buddies had come over to the house, and he said they had dared him to go through the basement window and walk through the house. He said it was so scary. Oh yeah, it was empty. He said it was so scary. I thought, boy, he's a braver man than I would have been. I would have done that. And the walls on that house, they're kind of like the walls in the schoolhouse. If you've ever been to the basement, the walls down there are like this. And that's what the walls were like also in Kirby House. They were really, really thick, maybe 3 feet yard. I mean, they were. But when we got the house, then you could find medicine bottles that had been kind of buried in the walls and cement and stuff as well.
Were they field stone or brick or cement?
Stone. Stone for the most part.
In that one photo, it looked like cement block.
Yeah, they're around the one side. It seems like there maybe had been a problem at one time. I don't know. But so anyway, the house was purchased by Shirley Vanderbilt. And anybody know Shirley? And she had the house, and she reinvented the structure at that time as a rooming house. And she made it livable again. Took it from the abandoned sort of house. And in 1983, the tired old gal was acquired by Warren and I. And we began to restore the house. This is just a few pictures of our restoration. This is a young fellow. We came down here from Mount Pleasant. We'd come down for Memorial Day, and we came back later with the kids, and we decided, yeah, we could do this. It had been a dream, to have a bed and breakfast and do all this. And then we got into it and all of the work, oh my goodness. But we had 40-some friends in Mount Pleasant who got excited about this whole thing, and they decided, yeah, they'd come and help, you know? And this is one, and I don't think he ever came back. He's taking linoleum off of the living room floor, and it was coming off in little mouse-sized pieces, you can see. Also, notice the ice spud behind. They'd also tried that, you know, to ice spud it off. Finally, Lauren got a sandpaper that was like a gravel road, and they just chewed it off. I mean, it was the only way that it was going to come off. And all of the floors had coverings on them. They were all linoleum or that square block stuff, you know. And some of that came off rather easily, but this did not. It was the last floor to be finished.
Was there wood floors underneath?
Yes, all oak.
That are there still?
They are still there. Yes. Aren't they, Mindy? So this is me as the stripper. I had such fun. I love doing this. It was a cupboard that was in the pantry. And I counted like 13 layers of paint, you know, it went down through silver and green, and oh my gosh, it was all colors. But finally got it off, took the doors off, took them into room 3, laid everything down, and it took me almost as long to strip that cupboard as it did everybody else to work on the house. It was a big job. I'm still stripping. This was in room 3. And this is the commons room after we got things together. My grandmother, my mother's mother, had passed the October before we started this project, and we kept thinking, what are we going to do with everything? And as she knew we were kind of coming into this, she said, oh, you can have anything you want, just take whatever you want. Well, we ended up taking most all of it. And so we were able to put together an old look, keeping the. So this is a postcard that we had showing the house and one of the guest rooms and the front porch and the pool. And then the old cook stove down below, which was functional and did work.
Did you put the pool in?
Pardon me?
Was the pool there?
We put the pool in, yeah.
Is it still there?
You covered it over, didn't you? Was it covered over or filled in or over? Covered over, yeah. So that was, loved the cook stove. It did belong to a friend. Somebody saying something?
What year was this?
Well, this would have been about 1985, 86. And this is a picture that we had. This would have been 87. Our daughter's wedding was there in 1986, and we had the lighter roof on, and then we put the dark roof on in 87. It seemed like things went in years. 84, we just used the house as a B&B. And 85, the upper deck went on. 86, the pool went in. 87, the new roof went on. It was and then we put the colors on before the roof. So. And then the house was named to the historic registry for the state of Michigan. And this came from a commercial record, January 1988. And it indicates the history that I've been telling you about the house. And we used the line drawing that we had done for. So the house went on, it's been on the historic registry now quite a while. And this is when we sold the house. We sold it to Ray Riker and Jim Gowron. And was sad. Oh, sad day. Lauren was very gleeful. he was the breakfast person. But I felt sad. I still love the house. I mean, I can kind of walk in my mind and see dust behind whichever door it usually was there, you know. And this is a picture of when Ray and Jim had the house. this is Ray, and Ray passed in January of 2010. And after that, Jim was running the house pretty much on his own. What? In March of 2013, Jim made the decision to sell the Kirby house. And then it was bought. And Mindy is manager of the Kirby house. And J. Paul, I never know how to say his last name, is it Garrett? Huh? Garrett Tanny, okay. And so he created this movie, and I don't know, how many of you have seen Saugatuck-Douglas? It's worth watching. There you go.
Dick's forehead is in it.
Some of you might have even been in the movie, I don't know, because it was filmed at Kirby House, and I think that's what sparked J. Paul's interest in doing or restoring the house again. And so here's welcome to the Kirby Hotel. So it says, after 3 weeks of filming in the home, J. Paul decided to take the Kirby house under his wing and give it a modern look and feel, yet keep its architectural integrity. Renovations began in March of 2014. We took that from their website. And here's another picture as it is today. So you can see the house has had many and varied uses and many, many stories. I'm sure by this time Mindy has her own stories that make you feel good. So with that, we're going to take a relook at the Kirby house through time. This is, as the house, it's an authentic sort of picture, and but they changed the outside, as you can tell. They took away the roundness and made it more. But you can see up there it says Kirby House Douglas. And the architect was Daverman and Son out of Grand Rapids. Hawthorne Lodge. Did we ever find any hawthorn bushes? I don't know, no? There's a picture of it as the hospital. There she is.
Is that in the 60s or something?
This would have been in the 60s, after the hospital left.
When was it an antique?
Sometime after if the hospital left in the 60s, and I don't think Shirley bought it until sometime in the 70s, and F. Thomas, I think, had it in the later 60s. So I think this was a progression. This might have could have even been early 70s, I don't know.
Didn't F. Thomas have the antique store?
Yes. Yes. One of the other things, F. Thomas had some friends in the area. There was Bill Collins. Anybody remember Bill Collins? His wife was Margie Collins. And they had this group of friends, and they would meet at the Kirby house up in what we called room 7. It would have been the front west room. And they would play cards. And there was a fireplace there, so they could, light the fire, and it was kind of used as a game room. But that's the only thing that was there, or the only way it was used, except for Ev's office, which was down in the dining room. So, this is one of our first pictures, as her colors were on. One of our friends, I don't know if you can see this awning here, one of our friends made that. And it went all the way around the front porch.
You want to tell them the original color?
Oh, the original color of the house, as we were prepping and doing that kind of stuff, was kind of a brownish red. It was very somber, and the windows, as far as we could tell, had been done in dark green. It was a very somber looking house. If you go down Lake Street, the street that goes into Saugatuck, there's a house that I think is of similar color, you know, that it looks, it's a darker color. So when we got it though, it was white because the hospital had it white and we just dolled her up. We had ribbons at the windows. Oh dear. This is Ray and Jim's picture.
Did they repaint it? It's hard to tell.
Did they repaint it?
Yeah, is it a different color?
I think it's the lighting and the film.
Oh, okay.
It's the same colors. What they did do, they darkened her mascara. You know, around the windows, it looks darker. If you look, let's see.
Yeah.
See, we had the raspberry color around the windows, and then they put a dark green or whatever around the windows. So they gave her more mascara than we had given her.
The chimneys changed. Was there a problem with the chimney somewhere?
Which chimney changed one?
Well, it's the one on the east side. That
No,
one was the same. Yeah, I noticed with another picture that it was much more.
It looks the same to me.
Go back.
Well, it's got a cap on it in the later picture.
Yeah, but
That's on
there
black
was
and white.
one that was earlier.
Still has the cap there and the cap there.
No,
And so this is how she looks today. So Sarah Kirby died in November of 1961. She's buried in the Riverside Cemetery in Hemet, California. The interesting thing is, we had a guest at the house, and people were always so kind. We'd say something, and it seemed like they would just scurry out to find something. And so these people were from that area of Hemet, California, and by golly, didn't we get a grave rubbing? By this big. And it was something we left with the house because I felt it should still be there, you know, it was part of Sarah. Anyway, but more to the point and more interesting is the fact that Sarah chose not to come back to the Douglas Cemetery to be buried next to Frank.
That speaks volumes.
That just says a whole lot, you know? And so I think she had probably thought about that for a while. But as she was her mother died about 1903. Her dad, Willard, died in 1918. And before her mother died in 1903, she was making frequent trips to California, and you could read about her in the newspaper making these frequent trips, and her mother would go with her, and the nights would be cool, and you need a wrap, and so whether she was going on train, I can't believe she would have gone any other way than by train, but she was going to California in the early 1900s, and as she left here, because of Blue Star Highway, I'm sure, she went to California, and that's where she stayed. Her Jim at Kirby House, he had been in touch with some of the relatives out there, and they sent, the picture that I have of Faith, the old picture of Faith, they had sent that and shared that with Jim. And so there are still people out there who are descendants of Sarah, but she's in the Riverside Cemetery. And unless you have questions or thoughts,
Marsha, what was the third floor originally used for?
it was a ballroom, and it would have been a rather large space. I think the house, if we can look back on the, I think I can make this go back forward might have been a better way, because there, I'm going back to the
back to the floor plan.
Look at the chimney. Seriously?
He's right.
These are renderings.
No, I see.
It's the coloring. What, which way?
Back.
Back
They're
there.
on their rendering.
I will look at the floor plan. Right now, I hardly remember.
But anyway, when you look, Sarah built the house with running water. And she built a bathroom. Here's a lavatory. Okay? And there's also a lavatory up here. Now, when we got the house, this toilet was here. It's the same location. Down here, the toilet was moved and it was sitting over here. There was a sink here, and this closet had been taken out, and there was a tub. So that had been changed. But she also had an outhouse. So she had her pants and suspenders both, you know. Are we done?
Any more questions?
Which room was the operating room? Room number 3, you said?
There was room, this would have been her room, or it would have been the main bedroom, I think, and being on the main floor and all of that.
Okay.
So that was the operating room. But I also know that there had been some operations supposedly done up in room 4, is what I heard from other people. Now, all I know is what I hear. You know? But there are pictures in the commercial record of the nurses carrying the patients up and down the stairs. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Are there more questions?
Sorry, question. I just wanted to say that F. Thomas babysat us when we were kids. Did he? He was a wonderful babysitter. And the other thing I wanted to say is that my father met Thor Heyerdahl at the convention in Grand Rapids and found him the place to stay, finish his book, and we had dinner with him many times. And got to know
That's
him.
exciting. I didn't know that.
Right.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Marsha, I don't know, but when the new owners took over and made it the restaurant that it is now, I don't remember what year it is. Are there any representatives of the new owners here? Okay. You guys took pictures of all, you had an open house, and you took pictures of all those who had been born in the house over the years. And there was a tremendous crowd because it was quite a crowd.
We had a
Whatever
grand
happened?
opening, and we put out a memo, if anybody was born at the Kirby house, we'd like to invite you over for a complimentary breakfast and tour before the grand opening. So we're thinking, oh, maybe 10, 15 people will show up who really lives anywhere near where they were born. So that Saturday morning comes, there was a good 80 people that came at 8 a.m.
So whatever happened to all those photographs? Because you took it in, I think, class years or something. Because I was born in 35, and I was one of the first to get pictures taken. But this went on into, which I was surprised because I just didn't realize it stayed open that long.
We had them posted for a while, we had them on the website for a while, we rotated through pictures, and then I think we did give some to the commercial record as well.
Does the Historical Society have any of that?
I will find out.
Did you make it available to anybody?
Anybody who wants it can have them.
How?
One more question.
Oh,
Gloria.
how many beds? Or how many people? I heard that they had been licensed to have like 5 or 6 beds, and I think they ended up with 19.
Before I acknowledge terrific work Marsha did, I also want to acknowledge Marsha Kontio, Marsha's husband and partner in all this, in making the Kirby house what it was. And Marsha, terrific job, great stories. Remember, we got the art exhibit upstairs. There are 3 more monthly presentations. Next month is at All Saints Episcopal Church, a field trip to celebrate their 150th anniversary. As indicated, the October is authors take on the towns, and a new one in November will be a peek inside the History Center's attic, our most fascinating parts of our collections. So hope to see you then, and really appreciate you coming to all the Tuesday talks and this last Tuesday talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me turn this off, like in the old days when they called it the wrinkle room.